This is the download recap from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. The download recap is brought to you by Podscribe. You can find out more at podscribe.com. This week's top stories: the Podcast Movement Archive is now live. Spotify names co-CEOs as Daniel Ek transitions to chairman. A rundown of what happened at the IAB Podcast Upfront. SoundStack launches HLS for podcast publishers, and the rise of the creator conglomerate. Let's get started. In the interest of empowering the podcast industry and sharing insights beyond the walls of a convention center, Podcast Movement has uploaded all of Dallas 2025 stage events to a new YouTube channel. Running alongside the Podcast Movement YouTube presence, the Podcast Movement Archive will serve as a repository for Podcast Movement presentations going forward. 2025 sessions have been made public, along with custom playlists sorting them by their respective conference tracks. Daniel Ek has transitioned from CEO to executive chairman of Spotify. Former Chief Business Officer Gustav Soderstrom and former Chief Product and Technology Officer Alex Norström have announced they are co-CEOs who will step into their new roles effective January 1st. The two have been co-presidents of the company since 2023, largely leading strategic and operational development at Spotify. As Brian Barletta says in the opening of his article, every single ad run on a podcast is ultimately placed there by decision of the podcaster themselves. Whether directly from them or through their team, baked-in ads, dynamic insertion, programmatic setups, all of them are actions only possible with the direct consent of the podcaster. Over the past year, the Department of Homeland Security has increased their spend in podcast advertising, and a knock-on effect of that has been an uptick in negative comments from shocked podcast listeners sharing that they just heard an ad from Immigration and Customs Enforcement in their favorite podcast. Even with publishers promising they've done everything they can to stem the tide of politically charged ads, some are getting through. While rare occurrences, they still happen and they still strike a nerve. Barletta gives an overview of how this can happen, what tools exist to tweak it, and what podcasters can do to take full ownership of the ads running on their podcasts. Even in a world where an advertiser motivated to reach placement quota could casually label a DHS ICE recruitment ad as job recruitment instead of politics without consequence. One can head off this particular issue at the pass by fully blocking the source domain, for example, dhs.gov, but this is kneecapped by platforms that don't require advertiser domains in an ad in the first place. Not every platform is built to granularly allow each show to block what they want to block, meaning publishers could be faced with mass blocking a genre of ad across every podcast managed, even if they have podcasts in their stable that want ads from the classifications that other shows don't want. Here's a quote from the article, quote, "These issues aren't unique to podcasting, but when they occur, they are certainly more jarring than a banner ad. The more popular podcasting becomes, the more issues like this will rise up. We're far past gas and oil ads running on an anti-fracking podcast. Now, with the solutions available to monetize your show, it's critical we understand the decisions we're making and the controls we're able to use. It's not fun to hear that this is all on the shoulders of the show, but that's the truth. Podcasters pick their hosting platforms and their monetization partners. They benefit from the revenue as much as they suffer from the harmful association." End quote. The piece ends with a call to action to start conversations, ask platforms and monetization partners how their ad ops work, and figure out how things can be set up to avoid ads from sources you don't want. And if they can't easily answer those questions, perhaps it's time to start shopping around. The IAB Podcast Upfront was this week, and as usual, a lot happened. First up, let's go over Spotify stuff. Variety covers the announcement Spotify is opening up their ad inventory to Amazon's demand-side platform. The global strategic partnership makes Spotify streaming audio and video inventory available to Amazon DSP customers. Megaphone podcast publishers are also getting in on the ad action, with Spotify announcing that mid-year 2026, Megaphone-hosted publishers will receive access to more monetization tools. Specifically, publishers will be able to traffic both direct sold campaigns and private marketplace deals using Spotify ad tech. And finally, in the Spotify section, The Hollywood Reporter is partnering with Spotify to do their first ever dedicated podcast roundtable video, featuring top nominees from the Best Podcast category at the Golden Globes. On the data side of the upfront, new Nielsen Podcast Fusion powered by Edison Research data debuted in a Nielsen Media Impact presentation demonstrates the wider reach of podcast advertising. In an example of a one-month campaign with a $5 million budget, the starting month shows reach among adults 18 to 44 is at 60%, with just 1% of the budget going to podcast spend. The following month shows what happens when you reallocate funds from broadcast and cable TV to give podcasting 21% of the funding. With no additional budget added into the campaign, the reach for 18 to 44-year-olds lifted to 76%. As followers of the Podcast Standards Project will remember, the current push for wide adoption in the podcast industry is that of HLS, which stands for HTTP Live Streaming. In short, HLS is an existing adaptive bitrate streaming protocol that breaks media into small segments, meaning podcast consumers can listen to or watch a video podcast episode without pre-downloading the entire file, as well as automatically adjusting playback quality that tunes itself to their current connection speed. Here's a quote from SoundStack CEO John Stevenson. Quote, podcast consumers are some of the most enthusiastic audiences out there. The onus is on all of us to keep them coming back, and fast. Clear listening is fundamental. But that's just the starting point. Enabling more efficient ad insertion, setting the foundation for more accurate measurement, and more. HLS will be a tremendous catalyst to increased ad spend and publisher growth. End quote. In addition to SoundStack's announcement, Pod News Daily also got in on the fun with announcing HLS support. And for our final top story, the rise of the creator conglomerate. This is by Alexander Lee at Digiday. Content creation has grown to the point there are several large players in the industry that have built up their own media companies around the content itself. Mr. Beast, Darman, Mythical Entertainment, they're all production companies that have evolved into creator conglomerates in their own right. The story takes a bit of a twist, as Alexander Lee soon discovered that all 9 of the sources he interviewed for this article knew each other. Here's a quote from the article. Quote, the 9 creator company executives interviewed for this article appeared to all know each other, with several of them referencing a web of behind-the-scenes WhatsApp chats used to swap notes about topics like advertising fees, brand deal negotiations, and behind-the-scenes creator community drama. End quote. Which means the top brass are sharing notes. Much like podcasting, the executives of the YouTube world are prioritizing collaboration and industry maintenance over cutthroat competition. Finally, it's time for my quick hits. These are the articles I've covered throughout the week that didn't quite make top story coverage, but I still argue are worth including in your weekend reading. So here's what I've got today. Mission-based media founder Dan Kendall has a new piece on Sounds Profitable about milkshakes and podcasting. Audiences are hiring podcasts to fulfill a job. The trick is making sure podcasts fit that description. PRX has acquired longtime exclusive sponsorship sales firm Soundrise, and starting next year will absorb Soundrise in as PRX's in-house sales team. Pew Research has a new fact sheet sharing data about how American adults consume podcasts, including how often they get news directly from podcasts. Large Media's Joelle Knoll has a new piece in defense of protecting and supporting transparent, independent journalism in the podcast industry. Cultural content hub Pod Digital Media has announced a slate of omni-channel cultural event activations, all of which was done during a presentation at Podcast Upfront. And Variety covers the late nightification of podcasting to the point where podcasts not even about movies are attracting press-shy actors to promote movies. Specifically, the recent incident where Leonardo DiCaprio came out of his Leo DiCaprio to appear on In the Heights and promote one battle after another. That was the download recap by Sounds Profitable. I know I go through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article from this week I've mentioned by clicking the link in your show notes, or you can go to soundsprofitable.com, mouse over to the download section, and find every episode of the download right there for you. As usual, I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. And as usual, special thanks to you for sticking with me as I brought you the top stories you might have missed this week. Robot.
Download complete.